Hey, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to be doing a little bit of chit chat about this HP ProDesk. This is the 400G5 model. But when it comes to the ProDesk or the HP PCs, take note with different price ranges but also different kind of chipsets when it comes to generation or the i3, the i5 or the i7. Today we are going to be chit-chatting about the Intel Core i5 8th generation. So the HP ProDesk, and particularly when it comes to this newer model with the black and silver lining, this thing is absolutely great in many different ways. So here on the channel we have been chit-chatting about all kinds of different brands, but most of them were like mini PCs. Mini PCs like this tiny one over here. You can actually see that this model we're going to be chit-chatting about today is going to be massive compared with this tiny one, also known as the Elite Desk or ProDesk, in a smaller version. However, the reason why I wanted to make a video about it, because this bigger model utilized an option that we didn't have before with the smaller version that can be interesting with emulation itself. And that option is actually to use a GPU, and this is going to be giving us absolutely big advantages when it comes for upscaling and overall emulation performance. But in this video we are going to be implementing the GPU. However, we're not going to be focusing mainly on this because it can be different when you're going to be having different models. Because this is the 1030 and this is not the best choice when it comes to having a GPU. However, that was the only one I could find in the collection for now, but we can switch it out with different models. But also we're going to be doing a quick overview with all kinds of different options when it comes to emulation, but what are the differences between this particular graphic card and just the onboard one, and is it really beneficial to get all of this shenanigans going on for just a single video card. So let's remove this one. We're not going to be needing it anymore. So this thing is quite clunky compared with the other version. However, let's open it up and let's see what we can do with the GPU, because I did notice a problem. So what you can do actually is just open this up and we can just slide it off, or at least I'm going to be needing two hands. There we go. But what is different? To begin with, this thing does come with a built-in power supply. So it is not like the most epic power supply ever, because this is just a PC that is actually made for just basic office work. It also utilizes over here when it comes to a CD drive, so if you want to use that, that is possible, but we're not going to be using it of course today. So it has such a basic active cooling fan, and performance I think it's going to be quite nice. But there was one problem. If you want to implement the graphics card, it's going to be a big issue. Don't mind like the bracket, we're going to be changing it out later on for a low bracket. But if you're going to be slapping it in, it has a limited space. And the problem is with this, with the limited space, there is only a handful of GPUs that we can actually use. So what we're going to be doing is like removing this piece of metal for a low bracket, and then we're going to be putting it in later on in the video. But first, let's boot it up and let's do a quick overview and see what we can actually do out of the box. At the front we're finding the reset to USBs, and that's very convenient for plugging in a controller, and then of course the headphone jack out. And at the top we're finding the disk drive. But this massive bad boy comes with a lot of connections. A European connection or the Euro connector for plugging it in and powering it on. Having the option for all kinds of USB connections. RJ45 is great if you're going to be using Batocera or another program, even a fast port if you want to use an external drive, and a display port, two of them. So, however, there are a lot of different options when it comes to connecting your device. But how are we going to be connecting it and how are we going to be using Batocera? So first of all, we do have different options when it comes to emulation. We can use the Windows part and just slap ourselves a Lunchbox, let's say, drive in it, and we can just play through there. However, what we're going to be doing is using the Batocera, because I'm just going to be honest, I'm a huge fan of it. The Linux is very stable and very nice way to play. We can put a built-in drive. For example, we're going to be flashing it into NVMe, depending on the size of course, or we can just plug it in externally. That's one of those many ways that we can play. So let's plug it in and let's go and see what we can do out of the box and what kind of i5 8th generation we're having over here. But if you have chosen or made your own Batocera drive, next thing you're doing is getting a keyboard, plugging into the PC, and yep, we need to boot up the BIOS itself, because this is, I think, the biggest shenanigans we're having with these Batocera devices. So what you're getting is actually the HP PC Hardware Diagnostic UEFI. If you're going to be pressing the F2, going exit means you're going to be not exiting the product itself. You're going to be having the option to go back into the BIOS. Next up, what we're going to be doing is BIOS setup. You can also use F10 if you want to. Next up, we're having over here the problem with the security. This is one of the reasons why the bloody thing doesn't boot up. So what you're going to be doing is deep diving into this craziness, because with the HP, in my opinion, it's going to be quite a nightmare to disable everything. So you can see you're having the systems, command, everything else. There's so much stuff in here, but you don't need to mess around with it. Restore security settings but to factory default. That's the stuff you don't want to do. Go to the advanced options, secure boot configuration. In here we can just actually disable it. And this is stuff that basically that gives you the problem to booting up the drive itself. So legacy support disabled and secure boot disabled. That is one of the things you need to do. Okay, so what you need to do beside that is nothing. I'm going to be pressing exit. You want to save changes, press enter and yes. Just wait a moment. It will reboot itself. So then it will ask you for a code. So we're pressing the code in here. Don't use the numpad because we don't have that option. Otherwise it will not work. So you need to put in the typing or the code itself and pressing enter. And then it will be enabled and it will boot up into your drive. And if that doesn't work, you need to get into the boot method and try to boot up from your drive. Let me show you what I mean. So we're back into the setup. It still boots up into Windows. That is a good thing. So with boot options in here, we're going to be checking out what kind of options. Fast boot, you can disable stuff. So in my case, I'm going to be disabling the CD-ROM boot, network, and all the other stuff that we're going to be needing. We need to have the USB. So you can see the USB has been set to the SSD or some kind. It showcases an SSD. That's kind of weird. However, this is the stuff that we're going to be needing to do. You can see over here have been set to USB, the first one. And of course we can also disable the M2 if you don't want the Windows. What I'm doing is sometimes just removing it or flashing the Batocera on the M2. So you can only boot up into the Batocera itself. And now it forces into the boot up of the Batocera first. And what you can actually do is using the certain button for your boot sequence to be changed. And then you can actually go into the Windows itself. So that's actually how it is. And next up we're going to be checking it out. But first let's chit chat about the controllers. What are the options there? But first thing first, we're going to be removing the keyboard because we're not going to be needing it for now. I just want to grab a couple of them that I just use myself and for a good reason, because they are like super easy to use and set up. So one of the many brands we're having over here is, one of my favorite ones is the Beto brand. And so for example, if you want to get yourself into the arcade, you want to experience the, let's say, Neo Geo style, we can actually get this 8-Beto versus SNK Neo Geo wireless controller. This comes with Bluetooth capability and also a USB dongle, so you can plug it in and configure it fairly easy. Another thing is having a normal controller without analog sticks. If you just go, let's say, you just want to do a little bit of an old school gaming, that is one of the ways I love to play with the M30. Then we're having two Xbox 360 controllers. This is an original one, but there are also like good knockoffs now on AliExpress, and they're very comfortable to play. I just love this thing because if you're going to be plugging it in most of the images, it will automatically work. And if you want to get something different, it's more like this PlayStation 4 / Xbox thing weird style. That is the top controller, very comfortable. You have some, I think it is with or without rumble, and even a wireless version if you want to just have this particular one from another kit. But you can just plug these things in and most of the time it's ready to go, and with your image you can just play your games fairly easy. But what are the specs we're going to be using today? So I already mentioned before, so getting a different HP PC, there are a lot of different generations, and with different generation also comes with a different price tag. I'm not going to be saying exactly how much you pay for it because it depends where you're going to be looking, and sometimes you find these really cool bargains. I always keep pressing the wrong button. However, let's go to the information and let's see what we're going to be playing with today. So we're having a 2 terabyte image, so we have enough space to store all of our games. So the temperature 39 Celsius idle, and this has to do because of the ventilation and a massive cooling fan. This is one of the things I love about the HP PCs. So having the i5 8th generation or the 8600 running on 3.10 gigahertz, and actually CPU number is 6. What it says over here, and max frequency to 4300 megahertz. So when it comes to the GPU, we're having over here the Ultra HD Graphics 630, but we're going to be switching between the 1030 later on and trying to see what's the difference between, let's say, having an extra GPU, will this benefit, and is it going to be a great upgrade. But what can we play with Batocera? There's absolutely crazy amount of different systems that we can play. Of course, with the 8th generation i5 and the GPU, we will find some limitations. But in this video, we're going to be doing a quick overview of a couple of systems, but also going to be a little bit of an upscaling for the people who are interested. Because I think it's going to be very cool to see a lot of old school games, but also modern devices being played on this device. Of course, we can also implement Windows games, and that's one of the ways you can actually just implement new generation stuff. However, I think we need a better GPU CPU combination if you want to get into some crazy stuff. However, 3DO is one of the systems I think is interesting because we could play it on basic game box devices, and yeah, the old school stuff can be played on a potato nowadays, but also arcade here having more options, so I think that is going to be a lot of fun. However, let's do a quick overview and also do a little bit of a chit-chatting about adding an extra GPU in the mix. Oh crap, another problem. I noticed that the audio is completely messed up. Pressing start in the main menu will give you actually the main menu. Going to sound settings. In here we can adjust the volume settings if you want to. And next up, if you have no audio at all, what you need to do is going to the system settings. And in here we're going to be finding the video, but also the audio output. And the audio output, it's going to be, audio profile. And we're going to be setting it to a different output. It's going to be quite a little bit of a problem sometimes. We need to guess which one. I'm thinking getting the HDMI output, because that is going to be the one I'm going to be needing. So let's go and let's see if this fixes the issue. And you need to scroll through the different ones, let's say the different games, to see if it's going to be helping and pushing your audio to the certain, let's say, channel you want to. For example, headphone, HDMI, whatsoever. Start off with some arcade. With the arcade part, we do have thousands of freaking awesome games to play. With this PC, we can even play the games, the main Tekken ones, and also Killer Instinct, the stuff that we couldn't play on other, let's say, cheap game boxes. I think that is one of the cool things about this device. So let's try another game, one of my favorite main games, Blood Bros, but however, it doesn't boot up. So what we're going to be doing is holding the A button, going to the advanced game options over here, and then we're going to be setting it to a certain emulator. And let's see which one it was. I think it was like the MAME 78 Plus, so let's boot it up. And let's see if we're going to be booting up the game now. Sometimes you need to do it for certain games, you need to mess around with it. Nope, it was not the one. I have no idea sometimes. MAME 01039. Let's see if this is going to be fixing the boot problem. Hoping that we can actually play one of my favorite games. And nope, it's getting really annoying. It's getting really annoying now. We just have MAME. Okay, just use MAME. I have the idea that we're missing out on a good working ROM file, or is it just the emulator? Nope, it's the emulator. Weird. Wouldn't be surprised it's going to be the same emulator. However, with the automatic boot, it doesn't want to boot up into that. Doesn't matter. So, it seems to be working fine. Oh man, as a child I've been playing this game so much, and it's just a lot of fun to revisit these old school games and just have fun with it. So one of those many classic games that you really should check out. Just blow everything up. You can shoot at the can itself to getting extra bonus points, but of course you're getting shot like me if you're going to be too focused on that. Oh! There we go. That felt much better. But when it comes to the basic stuff, that will run just fine. Also when it comes to 8-bit, 16-bit. But still want to do a quick showdown with one of those games I love but also hate at the same time, because this is such a really difficult game. And emulation performance is going to be just fine in here. But do you really need a newer generation? No, because I had tested this on many dual cores, really old school CPU versions that run the old school 8-bit just fine too. Panasonic 3DO is another device I love to play on my original FZ10, but when it comes to, let's say, emulation, we can do different resolutions. So I'm bringing this now on 640 by 480, and yeah, that is, when I say rendering resolution upgrade, but just wanted to see what we can do. So we have been playing all kinds of different devices now, at least like arcade, NES, and you name it. But when it comes to this is a system that had a lot of cool hidden gems, and now we can actually play it fairly well on even higher resolutions on the original GPU. The bottom mapping is perfect. So when it comes to that, it's such a lot of fun playing this game. Yeah, come on. And if you wonder, does it run Doom? Yeah, it does. Oh yeah. Running Doom, you can do that on all kinds of wicked devices now. However, it's just fun. I love Doom for what it is. I did play it on my Sega 32X and many other devices, but of course this is just the port of the PC and the best one you can actually get. Love the bezels around it. You can still remember that having all kinds of PCs connected to each other, and this way we can just play cooperative or playing some death matches with Doom. Man, love this game, so much fun. I'm playing one of my favorite, let's say, beat 'em up games on the Sega CD. Yeah, that's one of those systems you don't find very often on really cheap game boxes. I mean, particularly those horrible game sticks. But this is absolutely a fun system with a couple of hidden gems. It's a system with not a lot of game titles. However, like Final Fight CD, Sonic CD, many ones that are absolutely awesome. I love to play these things on my original Sega and the CRT, but they're just fun to revisit very quickly into some emulation. And of course, having, in my opinion, maybe the best soundtracks of the Final Fight series. But how about all the other stuff in here? So when you're going to be looking into 16-bit, this is going to be running just fine. And it's just going to be an overall fun experience. One thing is a fact, if you're going to be grabbing too many rings of Sonic, he is going to be becoming super slow. I can't get up there! No! Ah! But let's get into some emulators and have some fun. So the next thing we're going to be doing is choosing the certain game to be testing, and Die Hard is one of those games I always love to check out. However, next thing we're going to be doing is holding the A button. Then we're going to be advanced game options, choosing the different emulator, in this case the Yaban Shinjiro. And next up we're going to be doing a little bit of a rendering resolution. So it has been set to 4K, but we're going to be messing with it to see how far we can actually push it with the GPU, and if it has horrible performance, we can also implement the extra GPU like the Nvidia to see if you're having any improvement. But Sega Saturn on 4K rendering resolution doesn't really need an extra powerful GPU. We can just run this on this, I think it's called the 630 onboard Intel GPU. That's kind of nuts if you think about it. So only downside I think of the Yaban Shinjiro emulator, that the overall audio quality is good, but it is quite low. So we need to tweak with that. However, if you're getting into this Die Hard and many Saturn games, 4K rendering resolution without any problem. So let's try this on some really high resolution, 3840, just to see how far we can push it. It dips down to 49. I'm quite surprised at the overall performance. Dipping to 45, but it would be a fun thing. 43 frames per second. What we can actually do is just do the same game and implement the GPU of Nvidia to see if this is going to be an upgrade, or at least a minor upgrade, with the 1030 GT. Oh, this is such a fun game. So let's see how it performs now with a different GPU implemented. So I know for sure if you're having a different, let's say, CPU, GPU combination, so having a more powerful GPU can even do some more wicked stuff. But the overall performance is so much significant better now, where it struggles big time without the other GPU, or the onboard GPU actually. Now we can just have a lot of fun on full 60 FPS. And of course you can also do a little bit of tweaking with two-dimensional games to see if you can have higher resolution going on with, for example, two-dimensional games. Moving on to the Dreamcast with Sonic Adventure 2 with the same resolution actually. So this is going to be the resolution that we're going to be using with the same like the Atomic Wave. So let's get into the game, resulting in the same kind of overall frames per second. Well, I think it's still playable. If you don't see the frames per second, I think it's going to be a still overall fun experience. I love it how the vibration also works on the controller, where you can just see it dipping. You do see the stuttering visuals, even not looking at the frames per second. This game is even running more horrible than the Atomic Wave version, with dipping to 41 frames per second. But how much fun would it actually be to add the GPU now and to see what happens? And take note, depends what kind of GPU you're going to be using. But the 1030 GT is not a great card in my opinion about it. There are way better options out there, but yeah, again, we are a limitation of the space inside of the case itself. That the performance boost is not that great. We do have like 50 frames per second now. Okay, so certain parts we do see an upgrade when it comes to that, but the overall performance is still okay when it comes to that. I was expecting way better performance now. So this part, previously we had like 40 frames per second. Yeah, you can see that we have indeed an increase of 10 frames here. Okay. Then I think I spoke too early when it comes to that. And again, I think if you're going to be using a GPU that is more powerful, we can just hit the 60 frames per second without any problems. Or of course getting a way newer generation Intel CPU or having an AMD Ryzen, because those APUs or GPUs on board are so great. So with PlayStation 1 we can do already some crazy upscaling with 4K rendering resolution. We had a minor dip to 41 frames per second, but that was only a minor dip in the beginning, but having a very stable overall frame rate on the onboard GPU. So where we have a great overall performance here, what we can actually try is to get ourselves a higher resolution and implement the GPU. But it's quite amazing to see that we can do so many cool overall rendering on just an onboard 630 GPU. There we have in the 43 dip. But let's see if it still dips if you're going to be implementing it on a GPU. I think it's going to be even more fun to check out. But let's move on to the Crash Bandicoot game with PlayStation 1. And the simple reason is that with the 4K we had overall great performance. And I can tell you, not want to push it further with the onboard chip. But now we have 11 times the resolution with the built-in GPU, and I got a TNT stuck on my head. Doesn't matter. So far no dips in having the stable 60 frames per second. And that is a very cool thing to see. So this is an example that with even a very cheap extra GPU implemented in, you can just have even higher resolutions in some of the games. And that was actually the clue of the experiment too, just see how far we can push it. And again, if you're having a way more powerful or better than a 1030 GT, we can even have the option maybe to put it on 12 times rendering resolution. And if you're fine with 4K, you can just use the onboard GPU. Just I wanted to check out if we can actually play some Tekken with rendering resolution on the onboard chip first. You can see that it struggles. It's running on 1080p rendering resolution. It really has a little bit of struggle here and there, but I think that's going to be a great sweet spot to check out if we can also implement an extra GPU and see how far we can go then. So with PlayStation 2 I still want to put it on 1080p, just to see if we can even have now a better overall performance. I did notice a very minor hiccup, but you can just see that the performance is so much better now. So let's go with the flow and let's see if we can manage to clear this freaking stage without any dips whatsoever. You can just see on 1080p it really benefits. And if you're going to be implementing a more powerful GPU again, maybe you can even do a little bit of 4040p or 4K if you want to go fully, let's say, wild with this. But I'm quite satisfied with the 1030 GT with 1080p rendering resolution. So next up I wanted to check out when it comes to 10 times resolution. And with PlayStation Portable it looks so great, however it's running absolutely choppy, and that is a little bit of a downside. So the next thing I just wanted to see is like how far we can push it and what will this GPU extra going to be giving us. So you can see it runs like 27 frames per second. Frame skip can be set to off. Of course we can do a little bit of a 4K rendering resolution, but what's the fun about that? So let's see what happens if you're going to be implementing a GPU and do we having a big boost that we can actually play 10 times resolution. PlayStation Portable 10 times resolution, where it was completely unplayable on the onboard GPU. Let's see what happens now. So far so good. Even with the intro we had like an overall better performance, but it seems to be that the GPU with this tiny upgrade is more than enough to play this on 10 times resolution. Let's go a little bit further. Yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted to see. It still freaking struggles. So where we do have like an overall better performance, we still need to do a little bit of tweaking, or just leave it as this and live with the fact that we're having sometimes minor dips. But while I'm playing PlayStation Portable games on such a high resolution on a beautiful 1080p display, it's absolutely nuts. Oh, when there is an explosion you can see massive dips. And you can also put in the frame skip if you want to. We just wanted to see what happens as it is. Ooh, particularly the same spot again. So with the onboard chip you do have some okay performance. I just wanted to see what happens if we're going to be putting it on 920 by 4040. See the frame per second already dipped to 21. So yeah, that is not the way that we actually want to play. I don't really know the visualize at this point. Maybe it's going to be stuttering later on in the game. But you can see it goes back to the 30 frames per second. So this is just great, and we can check out some other games, but I just want to focus what happens. So we do have a dip. Well, what we can try actually is do a little bit of a higher resolution and implement the GPU at this point to see what are the difference. And also I want to be pointing out, maybe I said it throughout the video a couple of times, depending what kind of GPU. I have the 1030 GT, is not a great card at all, but will give us maybe a little bit of a boost that we can actually play everything. Because that was the clue of this PC, that we can add a GPU to it to increase performance of the rendering resolution. Okay, so I just wanted to see what happens if we're going to be putting it on the highest resolution. On the onboard GPU I know that is not going to be having any positive effect and having a lot of problems. But with the N64, man, we have been so many, let's say, problems with cheap game boxes, but even on the highest setting of the resolution. That is just insane. We have great performance to that. So 5760 by 4320 or some kind. This is absolutely nuts. Of course we're going to be doing the crazy test with F-Zero GX. I love this game, by the way. It's the only game I play on my GameCube at this moment. But you can see it struggles. You know, it's hitting the 60 FPS. But sometimes it does struggle, and I just wanted to see what happens if we're going to be implementing a GPU. I think it will have a big, massive impact on this particular resolution now, but maybe we can also do a little bit of an upscaling to see if you're having 1080p with the GPU, and maybe if you're having more powerful GPU that it has way better performance, you even can put it on 4K resolution. But you can see it does like a lot of dips, even 720p. Oh. So we need to lower it to 480p to get like a stable overall performance. And this time with the Dolphin, where we did have an overall, oh crap, forgot to use, I was trying to use the D-pad. But with the implemented of the GPU on 1080p, so we're even having higher resolutions, it runs absolutely smooth. I've been messing with it. We can try a little bit of a higher resolution, but then we're going to be having the same result with minor hiccups. If you don't mind it, you can do it. And of course, the F-Zero GX isn't a very difficult game to emulate compared with other ones. So having like a basic game, two-dimensional stuff, you have even better result with this particular GPU. And again, GPU upgrading, a faster GPU will also mean having overall better upscaling. So I just wanted to see, and I can say that it's a very overall positive thing going on when implementing an extra GPU to this old school mini PC. Okay, so when it comes to the GPU, I am very satisfied with the overall result. Okay, so if you're having a better CPU-GPU combination, even a better GPU in this point, we can even do a little bit better upscaling. But as it is, without the GPU, if you just want to play some old school stuff, yeah, I think you don't need to buy even this model. There are a lot of, let's say, i5s, i7s, new generation out there that doesn't support GPU. But if you don't care about upscaling, you're not going to be actually going to be needing it at all. But in the end, when you're looking at like this setup, So having a controller and extra GPU implemented that doesn't cost a lot of money, and hard drive you can make it yourself or buy one ready to go. So combining this with this HP PC, I think it's really cool, and this way we can play a lot of different games and even do a little bit of an upscaling for not a lot of money. Thank you all for watching. Consider subscribing. Let me know what do you think of this combination and which GPU do you want to use with this. It would be great if you subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.